Have you ever woken up, looked around your room, and wondered what would matter if this were the very last morning of your life? The clock keeps ticking. Your phone buzzes. The world continues as if it will never stop. Yet, somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispers that time is not infinite. This is the hook most of us avoid. We fill our days with noise, plans, and distractions, hoping to postpone the moment we have to face our own mortality. But what if, instead of running from it, you invited that thought in? What if you let it guide you like a compass, showing you what truly matters before it's too late? Mortality is the one certainty we all share. Philosophers from every culture have tried to pierce its mystery. The Stoics practiced memento mori, the contemplation of death, not as a grim exercise, but as a way to sharpen life. In the quiet of the night, Marcus Aurelius wrote to himself, reminding his soul that he would soon be gone and that everything ephemeral would dissolve. This was not despair, it was clarity. When you remember you will die, you stop wasting time on what does not matter. You stop living someone else's life. Imagine for a moment that today really is your last. Your to-do list is irrelevant. The deadlines, the minor conflicts, the endless scrolling all fade into dust. What rises to the surface instead? Maybe a face you love but haven't called. A project you've been postponing because you're afraid to fail. A dream you've locked away for someday. Mortality rearranges our priorities in an instant. It strips away the trivial and leaves only the essential. And here is the paradox. When you face death fully, life becomes more vivid. Colors are brighter. Words are heavier. Touch is warmer. The moment you realize it could all vanish, you start to truly see. We live as though we have an endless supply of mornings. We tell ourselves we'll start tomorrow. We think we're playing a long game, but we're really spending a finite currency. Every hour you exchange for something that does not feed your soul is an hour you will never get back. When you imagine today as your last, the petty grudges lose their grip. The masks you wear for approval start to slip. You begin to speak more honestly, love more deeply, and forgive more quickly. Mortality is a ruthless teacher, but it is also a liberator. Think about the small ways death shapes your choices, even when you don't acknowledge it. The urge to create art, to have children, to build something lasting. These are attempts to leave echoes behind. We long for significance because we know we are temporary. Yet significance does not have to mean fame or monuments. It can be as simple as kindness, as subtle as the ripple of your presence in another person's story. When you realize the shortness of life, even a brief moment of authentic connection becomes precious. You stop asking, "What do I get?" and start asking, "What do I give?" Philosophy at its best is not abstract speculation, but preparation for living and dying well. Socrates called philosophy training for death because it trains the soul to detach from illusions and face reality. In our culture, we hide death behind hospital walls and polite euphemisms. We sanitize it, distance it, and pretend it belongs only to the old or the sick. But death is in the room right now. It is in the fading cells of your body, in the shifting seasons outside your window. It is not an enemy, but a frame. Without it, your life would be a formless sprawl, without urgency or shape. So how would you live differently if you truly felt the weight of your mortality? Would you still postpone the conversation you know you need to have? Would you still say yes to obligations that drain you? Would you still treat your time as something cheap and replenishable? These are uncomfortable questions because they reveal the gap between how we live and how we want to live. Yet that discomfort is a doorway. It is the moment when philosophy stops being a hobby and starts being a force that transforms you. Notice how your mind reacts as you listen. Maybe there's a flicker of fear, of resistance, a thought like, "Not now, not me." This is normal. We've been trained to think of death as a dark intruder. But what if death is not the opposite of life, but its partner? Without endings, beginnings lose meaning. Without goodbye, hello is just a sound. The finite nature of our days gives rise to beauty, like a sunset burning brighter because it will soon disappear. When you breathe in and breathe out, you are practicing this rhythm of life and death with every moment. There's a reason spiritual teachers across traditions urge people to meditate on impermanence. Buddhists visualize their own body dissolving into dust. Christian monks keep skulls on their desks as reminders. Samurai warriors rehearsed their own death each morning so they could meet the day without hesitation. These are not morbid obsessions. They are acts of freedom. When you accept that you will die, you're no longer held hostage by fear. You stop clinging to every comfort, every opinion, every slight. You become more courageous, more authentic, more alive. And yet, this is not about reckless abandon. It's not about quitting your job, burning bridges, or acting as if consequences don't matter. Reflecting on mortality is about precision. It's about choosing where to invest your limited time and energy with care. It's about aligning your daily actions with your deepest values, because there may be no later to make it right. Mortality teaches you the art of the essential. It forces you to ask, if this were my last day, would this be how I want to spend it? Think of the relationships in your life. If today were your last, who would you reach out to? What would you say? What would you stop saying? Think of your inner life. If today were your last, would you still hold on to shame, resentment, or regret? Or would you let them drop, like heavy stones you've carried too long? In the light of mortality, forgiveness is not just noble, it's urgent. Gratitude is not just polite, it's vital. Joy is not a luxury, it's an imperative. This first reflection is an invitation, not a conclusion. Sit with it for a moment. Feel the pulse in your wrists, the rise and fall of your breath. Every beat, every inhale is a finite gift. You don't control how many are left, but you do control how you meet them. Mortality can be your enemy or your mentor. The choice, strangely enough, is yours. If you're still listening, something inside you is ready to look mortality in the eye. This willingness is rare. Most people turn away the moment the subject comes up. But you're here, which means some part of you senses that the contemplation of death is actually a doorway to a richer life. The question is, how do you carry that awareness into your daily existence without becoming anxious or depressed? How do you let it energize you instead of paralyze you? The first step is to bring mortality into focus intentionally, not as a fleeting scare, but as a steady lens. Each morning, before the noise of the day begins, pause and remind yourself, my time is limited, my energy is precious. This isn't a curse. It's a permission slip. It gives you the courage to prioritize. You begin to sort your life the way an artist edits a painting, brushing away what is unnecessary so the true image can emerge. When you know the canvas is finite, every stroke matters more. Another way is to live with micro goodbyes. Every time you part from someone, even for an hour, imagine it could be the last time. This is not about being morbid. It's about being fully present. It changes the way you hug your child, answer your friend's call, or say goodbye to a colleague. Your words become softer, your patience deeper. You start to see the sacred in ordinary encounters. Death's shadow gives every moment a golden edge. Mortality also invites you to rewrite your story. We all live inside narratives about who we are, what we're allowed to do, and what's possible. These stories can be comforting, but they can also be prisons. Ask yourself, if I had only 1 year left, what story would I want to tell with my actions? Would I still define myself by past mistakes, by someone else's approval, by a job title? Or would I step into a truer version of myself? You don't need permission from the world to do that. Death has already permitted you. The clock is ticking. The stage is open. Step onto it. Look at how societies have used the awareness of death to create meaning. The ancient Egyptians built monuments that still rise from the sand thousands of years later. Medieval cathedrals carved angels and skulls side by side, reminding worshippers of eternity and decay. Even modern thinkers, from Viktor Frankl to Ernest Becker, have argued that our confrontation with mortality is the root of creativity, ethics, and love. Everything we admire in human culture, art, courage, compassion, emerges from the tension between our longing for permanence and the reality of impermanence. You are part of that lineage. Your small choices today echo in the vastness of time. Yet awareness without action is only half the journey. Mortality calls you to act, not just to contemplate. If there's a conversation you've been avoiding, have it. If there's an apology you've been withholding, offer it. If there's a project that scares you because it matters, start it. The point is not to cram your calendar with frantic activity, but to align your actions with your essence. When you know time is limited, you stop performing for an invisible audience and start living for your own soul. There's also a subtle shift that happens when you practice this regularly. Your fear of death begins to soften. It's like standing in cold water. At first, every cell screams to get out. But if you breathe and stay, your body acclimates. You start to see the water not as an enemy, but as an element. In the same way, when you invite thoughts of death into your life gently and consistently, they lose their sting. Instead of shrinking you, they expand you. You become more willing to take risks, to speak truth, to love without guarantees. You become less concerned with how you're perceived and more concerned with how you are aligned. Mortality also reframes success. We're taught to chase achievements, followers, and wealth as if they will grant us immortality. But in the final hour, what will you remember? Not the metrics, but the moments. Not the applause, but the authenticity. When you picture your own deathbed, what kind of memories do you want to hold? What kind of relationships? What kind of inner state? Living with those questions in mind is not grim, it's clarifying. It's like turning on a light in a cluttered room. You suddenly see what to keep and what to let go. And here's a radical thought. What if death itself is not the end, but a transformation? Different traditions speak of it differently. Reincarnation, resurrection, dissolution into cosmic consciousness, but all hint at a larger mystery. You don't have to subscribe to any one belief to feel the power of that possibility. Simply acknowledging that death might not be annihilation, but passage can soften your fear and deepen your gratitude. It makes every act of kindness, every moment of beauty, part of something larger than you can imagine. As you integrate this reflection, notice how it changes your perception of small irritations. The traffic jam, the rude comment, the minor setback, do they still deserve the same energy? Or do they dissolve in the larger view? This is one of the hidden gifts of mortality awareness, perspective. You stop magnifying the trivial. You start focusing on what nourishes your soul. You start living with intention instead of inertia. You may also find yourself becoming gentler with others. When you remember that everyone you meet is also on a finite journey, that their time is just as limited, compassion arises naturally. You forgive more easily. You listen more deeply. You love more freely. Mortality not only sharpens your priorities, it softens your heart. It helps you see that we are all fellow travelers on a brief road. Take a deep breath right now. Feel the air enter your lungs and leave again. That cycle is a microcosm of life and death, happening dozens of times each minute. You don't control when the last exhale comes, but you do control how you fill the inhale before it. This is the practice, to live so fully, so authentically, that whenever the end arrives, you are ready. Not because you checked every box, but because you were present for your own life. So I'll leave you with a question to sit with, and I'd love for you to share your thoughts in the comments. If you knew with absolute certainty that today was your last day, what one thing would you do differently right now? What would you say? What would you release? What would you embrace? Your reflections might inspire someone else who's afraid to confront these questions. And remember, mortality is not here to haunt you, but to guide you. It's the ultimate teacher, the silent partner in every moment you live. Let it teach you urgency without panic, presence without clinging, and courage without arrogance. Live today as if it's your last, not in reckless indulgence, but in radiant authenticity. That is the paradoxical gift of death. It shows you how to truly live. If this video moved you or sparked a new perspective, give it a like and subscribe to the channel for more explorations of philosophy, self-mastery, and the art of living deeply. Together, let's build a space where every day counts and every moment matters.